She walked through the crowded hallway with a confidence that made everyone step aside. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, and she glanced at the students around her with a small, knowing smile. She was the kind of girl who commanded attention without saying much, and she had learned to use it to her advantage. Most people in the school knew her as the girl who could make anyone feel small, and she enjoyed that power. Teachers admired her intelligence, peers envied her charm, and students who weren't as bold kept their distance. She had a way of making people laugh when she wanted to, but also of making them feel embarrassed when they didn't. It was a delicate balance she had mastered over the years. She had a group of close friends who never questioned her, and together they formed a sort of inner circle. They laughed at her jokes, supported her when she needed it, and made sure her status in the school stayed high. Outside of this group, most students knew better than to cross her. Even small mistakes in front of her could lead to teasing or ridicule, and she never missed an opportunity to remind people of their mistakes, often in front of others so the embarrassment would linger longer. Her reputation had grown over time. It wasn't just that she teased people or was popular. She had a presence that made people notice her instantly. Teachers sometimes worried about her influence, and classmates whispered about her behind closed doors. Yet despite all of that, she had a secret that very few people knew. She was also insecure. Beneath the layers of confidence, there were moments when she doubted herself, when she worried that her popularity was fragile, that one mistake could ruin everything. But those thoughts rarely showed, and she made sure to keep them hidden. Confidence, after all, was her armor. On any normal school day, she could be seen walking through the halls with her headphones in, music playing softly, a notebook in her hand. She was organized, clever, and sharp. When she entered a classroom, the energy in the room shifted, and students found themselves waiting for her reaction to every comment. Teachers noticed that she often excelled in her work, turning in assignments that were perfect and earning praise that only increased her status. Yet despite her achievements, she often used her power to make others feel inferior. It was not malicious in a deep sense, but it had become a habit. Pointing out someone's mistake, laughing at a small error, or teasing someone for a clumsy moment had become her way of keeping control. Her favorite targets were the students who were quieter, those who didn't have the courage to stand up for themselves. She would find ways to corner them, to ask questions in a class that made them stumble, or comment on something personal that made them blush. And while some students tried to ignore her, many felt the sting of her words long after the moment had passed. It wasn't cruelty for the sake of cruelty. It was her way of testing boundaries, seeing how far she could go before someone pushed back. Most people never did, and that became part of her power. She also had a love for attention outside of academics. She would post pictures online, write witty captions, and interact with followers who admired her for her confidence. Social media became another stage for her persona, a way to reinforce the image she had built. Her online friends celebrated her charm and cleverness, sharing and liking her posts, which only added to her sense of being untouchable. It was a carefully constructed world where she always looked in control. Despite her popularity, there were moments when she felt alone. Popularity came with expectations, and she had to maintain a certain image constantly. Friends depended on her for advice, for leadership, for entertainment. Teachers expected her to be perfect. And while people admired her, they rarely saw the real person underneath the confident exterior. She had learned early on that showing weakness could lead to others taking advantage of her, so she built walls around herself. But even the strongest walls have cracks, and sometimes, in the quiet of her room or when she walked alone between classes, she wondered if anyone truly knew her. It was on one of those ordinary days that a new event was announced in school. A talent showcase that would be held in the auditorium. Posters went up around the hallways, and excitement buzzed in the air. Students began discussing what they would do, who would perform, and which acts would be the best. For most, it was a chance to show hidden skills, to step into the spotlight and receive applause. For her, the announcement sparked a mix of curiosity and apprehension. She had never been known for her talents outside of charm and wit. Singing, dancing, or performing in front of the school was not something she had ever considered. Her friends noticed her pause as she read the posters. One of them nudged her jokingly. "You're going to enter, right? You'd crush this thing," they said, half serious. She laughed, brushing it off, but inside, a flicker of uncertainty appeared. Could she really perform? Would she be expected to? The thought made her stomach twist slightly, but she quickly pushed it away. She wasn't going to let anyone see a crack in her confidence. Throughout the next few days, students began talking about the talent showcase constantly. Rumors about who might participate, who had a secret skill, and who might embarrass themselves filled the halls. And amidst all this chatter, her reputation as the untouchable girl lingered in the background. People assumed she would be above it all, that she wouldn't need to perform to gain attention. But for some of her classmates, the thought of seeing her challenged, of seeing her in a situation where she might feel vulnerable, was intriguing. They had never seen her outside her controlled environment, and the idea that she could be tested in this way sparked curiosity, and a little mischief. It was in this atmosphere that whispers started. Small groups of students began speculating that she should be encouraged to perform, not because they doubted her abilities, but because it would be entertaining to see her in a new light. They talked about how she always had a presence but never revealed other sides of herself. And for them, the idea of her stepping onto a stage, under the scrutiny of everyone, was exciting. It was a challenge, and challenges in school were never taken lightly. She walked through the halls on another ordinary morning, ignoring the conversations around her, but noticing the stares and quiet giggles from some corners. Something was different this time. People were not just looking. They were talking, whispering, and glancing at her in a way that made her feel slightly exposed. She tried to ignore it, keeping her usual confident stride, but she couldn't help the faint flicker of awareness that someone might be planning something. Her instincts, honed over years of navigating social hierarchies, told her that this was a situation that could shift the balance she had so carefully maintained. By lunchtime, the talk of the talent showcase had reached a new level. Students were daring each other, teasing, and even making small bets on what acts might appear. She sat at her usual table with her friends, listening to the laughter and chatter. They didn't directly mention her, but she knew she was at the center of attention. The idea that she might be forced into participating, even jokingly, caused a ripple of anxiety she had rarely experienced. It was a feeling she wasn't used to, uncertainty. As the day went on, she realized that her control over the situation was slipping just a little. The whispers, the glances, the excited tone of her classmates. It all pointed to something bigger than normal gossip. For the first time, she wondered if her status could be challenged in a way that she hadn't experienced before. And with that thought, a tiny spark of excitement mixed with fear began to grow. This was a new kind of stage, one where she couldn't rely solely on her charm, her wit, or her reputation. This was a stage where everyone would watch her, and she had no idea how it would go. By the end of the day, she was both curious and anxious. The talent showcase was just around the corner, and she couldn't ignore the growing buzz. For the first time, she realized that her peers were not just spectators. They were participants in the unfolding story of her life. And whether she wanted it or not, she was about to step into a situation that could change how everyone saw her. It was a moment she didn't fully understand yet, but one she would never forget. The halls that had always felt like her domain suddenly seemed larger, more unpredictable, and filled with possibilities she hadn't considered. And as she walked home, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Something that would test her in ways she had never imagined. The talent showcase was only a week away, and the school buzzed with excitement. Students were talking about who would participate, what talents would be displayed, and who might steal the spotlight. Among them, a few classmates whispered about the famous girl who had always been at the center of attention. They had watched her for months, observing how she ruled the school with confidence, charm, and a sharp tongue. They respected her, but there was also a mix of curiosity and mischief. They wondered what would happen if she were put on the spot, forced to perform in front of everyone in a way she had never experienced before. The idea began with a small group of students who were tired of always being in the shadow of her presence. They weren't cruel, but they wanted to see her in a situation where she couldn't rely on her usual charm and reputation. The talent showcase seemed perfect for that. If she could be encouraged, or even gently pressured, to perform, it would be fascinating to watch how she handled the challenge. They laughed quietly among themselves, imagining the scene, and then agreed that it had to happen. It wasn't meant to humiliate her completely, but it was a chance to see the confident girl face something unexpected. They started casually dropping hints in conversations. They talked about the showcase in front of her, commenting on how interesting it would be to see everyone's hidden skills. They mentioned that even the most confident students sometimes had secrets waiting to be revealed. At first, she didn't react much. She listened, smiled politely, and continued with her day. But the whispers followed her everywhere, growing louder and more persistent. Every time she turned a corner, she could feel eyes on her, and the casual mentions of the talent showcase seemed more like invitations than mere conversation. By midweek, the whispers had turned into direct suggestions. Her friends, who usually supported her unconditionally, began joking that she should enter the showcase. One friend laughed, nudging her playfully, saying, "Come on, everyone would love to see you up there. You'd be amazing." She laughed with them, brushing it off, but inside, she felt a mixture of excitement and unease. She had never performed in front of the entire school. She had never sung or danced or shown any talent in public like this. The thought was thrilling, but it was also nerve-wracking. Her usual confidence wavered in small moments. She found herself imagining what it would be like to stand on that stage, with hundreds of eyes watching her. What if she failed? What if people laughed? The possibility that her carefully constructed image could be challenged made her stomach twist. Yet, at the same time, a small spark of curiosity burned inside her. She had always enjoyed attention, and this was a new kind of attention, one that could reveal a different side of her. She wondered if she could rise to the challenge and impress everyone in a way that was completely unexpected. The small group of classmates who had started this plan watched her reactions closely. They weren't mean-spirited, but they wanted to see if their idea would work. They talked among themselves about ways to encourage her without making it feel like an attack. Perhaps a teacher could mention the showcase in class, or someone could casually ask her if she had a hidden talent. Little by little, they began creating opportunities for her to step into the spotlight. One day, during lunch, a teacher walked through the cafeteria, talking about the upcoming event. She encouraged students to participate and mentioned how wonderful it was to see talents revealed. The famous girl listened politely, nodding and smiling, but the group of students nearby exchanged subtle glances. One whispered, "Maybe she'll finally show something real." It wasn't cruel. It was more about curiosity. They wanted to see a side of her that no one had seen before. For years, she had been untouchable, admired, and feared. Now, they wondered what would happen if the untouchable girl was placed on a stage where she couldn't hide behind her reputation. Over the next few days, the pressure grew in small, subtle ways. Class discussions occasionally mentioned the showcase, posters appeared in hallways, and students talked openly about their plans for participation. Each time she heard the word, talent showcase, her heart beat a little faster. She began to consider what she could do, if she could do anything at all. The idea of performing publicly was terrifying, yet strangely exhilarating. She had never been forced into a situation where she didn't know the outcome, and it made her feel alive in a new way. The whispers from her peers became more persistent. At first, she laughed them off, thinking they were joking. But the teasing took on a sharper edge, a playful challenge she couldn't ignore. During one class, a student casually asked, "Aren't you going to show us your hidden talent?" The question was simple, innocent in tone, but it carried weight. All eyes subtly shifted toward her, and for a moment, she felt the entire classroom's attention focused solely on her. Her mind raced. She wanted to laugh, to dismiss it, but a part of her realized that this was the moment she couldn't control. This was a test she had never faced before. That afternoon, she sat quietly at her usual spot in the courtyard, thinking about what could happen. She considered the possibility of refusing, of saying she didn't want to participate, but the pressure of expectation weighed heavily. Her peers were watching, the whispers continued, and the anticipation of the showcase loomed large. The idea of performing was no longer just a suggestion. It had become a challenge she could not easily ignore. And the more she thought about it, the more her curiosity grew. Could she rise to the occasion? Could she surprise everyone, including herself? By the end of the week, her friends noticed a change in her behavior. She was quieter at times, lost in thought, and her usual confidence seemed tinged with uncertainty. They teased her gently, asking if she had made a decision about the showcase. She smiled but didn't answer immediately. The internal struggle was visible only to those who knew her well. She was balancing fear and excitement, the desire to maintain her image with the possibility of discovering something new about herself. The stage was no longer a distant event. It was rapidly approaching, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. Then came the day when the group of classmates decided to make their plan more direct. They approached her during a free period, joking and laughing, but with a subtle purpose. "We all want to see you perform," one said casually. "You've got to do something. Everyone will be watching." She laughed nervously, trying to brush it off, but they persisted, offering encouragement and playful nudges. The pressure was gentle but unmistakable. They were not trying to embarrass her. They genuinely wanted to see her take the stage. And for her, it was the first time anyone had directly challenged her to reveal a hidden side. Her mind spun with possibilities. What could she perform? Singing had never been considered. Dancing was not her strength, and acting felt daunting. Yet a small voice inside suggested that maybe this was an opportunity to show a different kind of talent, one that didn't rely on fear or intimidation. Perhaps she could impress people in a completely new way. The idea was terrifying, but it was also exciting. The thought of stepping into the unknown, of facing a crowd with nothing to hide, was a challenge unlike anything she had encountered before. As the school day ended, she walked home slowly, thinking about the coming showcase. The whispers, the teasing, the gentle nudges, they all came together to form a moment of possibility. She had always controlled her environment, her friends, and her reputation. Now, for the first time, she faced a situation where control was uncertain. And with that uncertainty came a mix of fear, anticipation, and a tiny spark of hope. Perhaps this could be a turning point, a chance to show the world a side of herself that had never been seen before. And as she thought about it, a small smile appeared on her face. The challenge was real, the pressure was growing, and the stage was waiting. She didn't know what would happen, but she felt a strange thrill at the thought that soon, everyone would see her in a way she had never imagined. The day of the talent showcase arrived, and the school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students filed in, finding seats, chatting, and whispering about who would perform first and what surprises might appear. The stage, bright and polished, seemed to hold endless possibilities. Backstage, performers paced nervously, adjusted costumes, and went over their lines in their heads. She lingered at the edge of the wings, her heart racing faster than it had in a long time. All week, she had wrestled with the thought of performing, and now the moment had come. Her friends had offered encouragement, smiles, and whispered jokes, but she knew that this time, there was no hiding. The audience would watch her every move, and the whispers of her peers would be louder than ever. She felt a knot in her stomach, a mix of anxiety and excitement. She took a deep breath, telling herself she could do this. She had always controlled situations, but this was different. This was a stage where she had to let go of control and let herself be seen in a completely new way. When it was finally her turn, a teacher called her name. She walked toward the stage, her heels clicking softly, the bright lights making the auditorium feel larger than it really was. Every eye seemed to follow her as she stepped onto the stage. She paused for a moment, letting the crowd settle around her, and then looked out at the sea of faces. She could feel their curiosity, their anticipation, and the subtle challenge they were sending her way. This was her chance to step out of the image that had defined her for years and reveal something different. She had chosen to sing, though she had never performed publicly before. Singing was something private, something she had always done when she was alone, when no one could judge her. Now it was time to share it. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a brief moment, and began. At first, her voice was soft, almost hesitant, but there was a clarity to it that immediately drew attention. The audience leaned forward, curious, as she continued. The sound was pure and controlled, and with every note, her confidence grew. As she sang, something changed. The initial nervousness melted away, replaced by a connection she had never felt before. She was no longer just the confident, untouchable girl everyone feared. She was a performer, vulnerable yet strong, sharing a piece of herself with the entire school. The song flowed from her effortlessly, each note carrying emotion, passion, and power. Whispers of surprise and admiration spread through the auditorium. People who had doubted her, who had expected a stumble or a nervous breakdown, found themselves captivated. Backstage, her friends watched in awe. They had seen her confidence in social situations, but this was different. This was raw talent, unfiltered emotion, and complete presence. Their eyes widened as they realized that the girl who had always controlled every situation with wit and charm had another side. One that could mesmerize and move people. Even the small group of classmates who had nudged her toward performing were stunned. Their plan to see her challenged had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of faltering, she was thriving, turning what they thought would be a playful test into a powerful display of skill. The audience was silent, caught in the unexpected magic of the moment. Every note she sang carried weight, drawing attention not only to her voice but to her presence. People who had feared her now admired her, and those who had doubted her were completely speechless. The song built to a crescendo, and she felt a surge of exhilaration as she hit each high note with precision and emotion. She opened her eyes and scanned the room, seeing faces of awe, surprise, and newfound respect. When the final note faded, the silence hung for a heartbeat before the auditorium erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, and whistling. Her heart pounded in her chest as she smiled, overwhelmed by the reaction. For a moment, she felt a rush of pride and joy unlike anything she had experienced before. This was different from social dominance or reputation. This was genuine admiration for something real, something she had created and shared. The applause washed over her, affirming that she had stepped into a new space and conquered it. Her peers, who had once seen her only as a bully or a force to be reckoned with, now saw a new side. They realized that beneath the sharp words and confident exterior was a girl capable of incredible talent and emotion. Some faces in the crowd softened, others glowed with admiration, and a few were filled with surprise. The shift in perception was palpable. The auditorium, once a place of ordinary student activity, had become a place where boundaries were broken and assumptions challenged. Backstage, she took a moment to gather herself, letting the applause fade into memory. Her friends rushed to congratulate her, their faces lit with excitement and pride. "That was amazing," one exclaimed. "I didn't know you could sing like that." Another nodded, saying, "You completely stunned everyone. I've never seen anything like it." She laughed softly, her chest still racing, and realized that the experience had changed her. It wasn't just about performing. It was about discovering a strength and a talent she hadn't allowed herself to explore before. As the evening continued, other students performed their talents, but her performance lingered in everyone's minds. People talked in hushed tones about how she had transformed in those few minutes on stage. They discussed the confidence, the control, and the power she had displayed. Even those who had teased her or questioned her abilities found themselves impressed and reflective. The impact of her performance was undeniable, and it had shifted the social dynamics in subtle but meaningful ways. She also felt something deeper inside herself. The fear and anxiety she had carried for so long had been replaced by a sense of accomplishment and self-awareness. She realized that her confidence didn't have to rely on control over others, on teasing, or on social dominance. There were other ways to be powerful, other ways to connect with people, and other ways to earn respect. Singing had revealed not just a hidden talent but a part of her character that had long been waiting to emerge. Walking off the stage, she received smiles, congratulations, and nods of respect from students and teachers alike. The famous girl who had once been known mainly for her teasing and sharp wit was now known for something deeper, something impressive and human. She felt a new sense of connection with her peers, a realization that admiration could come from sharing a real part of herself rather than relying on fear or status. That night, when she finally returned home, she replayed the performance in her mind. Every note, every expression, and every reaction from the audience felt alive in her memory. She thought about the journey from nervousness to exhilaration, from uncertainty to confidence. She understood that the moment on stage had taught her something invaluable, that true strength and respect come from embracing vulnerability and revealing hidden talents. The applause and astonishment of the audience were not just external validation. They were evidence that she had stepped into a new chapter of herself. Over the next few days, the school buzzed with discussions about the showcase. Students shared their favorite performances, but her singing was the topic of conversation everywhere. Teachers complimented her skill and poise, and classmates who had once feared her looked at her with admiration and curiosity. The social dynamics shifted subtly, not because she had lost her edge, but because she had shown that she could be powerful in a different, more inspiring way. Even her friends noticed a change. She laughed more easily without relying on teasing. She listened with more patience, and she seemed more aware of how her actions affected others. The experience had not only revealed her talent but had also sparked a quiet transformation in her behavior. She was still confident, still charming, but now her confidence had depth, a layer that was more human and relatable. The stage had been a test, but it had also been a revelation, showing her a side of herself she had never explored before. By the end of the week, people's perception of her had changed completely. She was no longer just the girl who had intimidated her peers. She was the girl who had stunned them with her talent, who had stepped out of her comfort zone and shone. Her powerful voice had left everyone speechless, and in doing so, it had also left an impression on her own life. She had learned that the courage to try something new, even under pressure, could open doors to self-discovery and admiration. And as she walked through the halls, she held her head high, not with the arrogance of before, but with the quiet pride of someone who had faced a challenge and found a new part of herself. The day after the talent showcase, the school felt different. Students walked through the hallways talking in excited whispers, replaying moments from the performance. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, a favorite detail, or a reaction to what had happened on stage. But the most talked about part was the girl who had once dominated the school with her sharp tongue and confident presence. Her singing had left everyone stunned, and it seemed like the entire school was buzzing with admiration, disbelief, and curiosity. People who had previously feared her now looked at her in a new light, and the dynamics that had defined the school for years had subtly shifted. She arrived at school, expecting the usual mixture of whispers and glances, but this time, the energy felt different. The stares weren't filled with apprehension or fear. They were filled with interest, respect, and even admiration. Students who had once avoided eye contact now smiled and nodded. Teachers complimented her in passing, remarking on her poise and talent. Even the classmates who had encouraged her to perform approached her with genuine excitement and amazement. It was a strange feeling for her, familiar in some ways but also completely new. She had always been admired for her confidence and control, but this was admiration born from something real and personal, not something she had manufactured. In the cafeteria, she sat with her usual group of friends, but the conversation was different. They talked about the performance, the applause, and the surprise in the audience. They laughed and recounted specific moments, but beneath the humor, there was awe. She listened, smiling, feeling a warmth she hadn't expected. For the first time in a long time, the admiration she received wasn't tied to fear or social dominance. It came from genuine talent, from revealing a side of herself that she had kept hidden, and the realization made her feel lighter, freer, and more connected to the people around her. Throughout the day, students approached her in small groups, congratulating her, asking questions, and expressing amazement. "I had no idea you could sing like that," one whispered, almost shyly. Another said, "You completely stunned everyone. I can't stop thinking about it." She thanked them, feeling both surprised and touched. These were interactions that didn't require clever teasing, quick wit, or social power. They were simple, human connections built on admiration and curiosity. She realized how rare and valuable that felt. For years, she had relied on control and status to influence her peers, but now she experienced something entirely different: the respect and fascination that came from being authentic. Her friends noticed the change too. They had always enjoyed her confidence and humor, but they saw a new layer emerging. She laughed more easily without teasing anyone. She listened with more attention, and she seemed more reflective. The performance had revealed not only her talent, but also a part of her personality that had been overshadowed by the desire to maintain control. She was still confident and charming, but there was now an added depth, a warmth that made people feel more connected to her. They noticed how she acknowledged compliments with gratitude, how she engaged with curiosity and openness, and how she allowed herself to be vulnerable without fear. Some classmates who had previously been targets of her teasing found themselves reconsidering their perception of her. They remembered moments when she had made them feel small or embarrassed, but now they saw a different side. They realized that behind the confident, sometimes harsh exterior, there was someone capable of talent, emotion, and genuine connection. It didn't erase past behavior, but it allowed them to see her as more complex and human. The admiration and respect she received made it easier for others to approach her, interact without fear, and even consider new friendships. Teachers also remarked on her performance, highlighting her courage and skill. They had seen confident students before, but her ability to step out of her comfort zone and excel in a completely different way impressed them. They commented on her poise, her emotional expression, and the way she captivated the audience. These moments of acknowledgement felt different from the usual praise for academic achievement or social influence. They recognized her effort, her bravery, and her ability to share a personal talent with the entire school. Even the small group of classmates who had encouraged her to perform felt a mix of pride and surprise. They had expected to see a challenge or a moment of hesitation, but instead, they witnessed her shine. They realized that the performance had changed something fundamental. She had faced a situation that could have been uncomfortable or humiliating, and instead, she had transformed it into a moment of strength, connection, and admiration. Their playful plan had led to an unexpected outcome, one that enriched the school community and allowed her to discover a new dimension of herself. As the day went on, she reflected on the performance and its impact. She realized that the experience had taught her valuable lessons about vulnerability, courage, and authenticity. She had always controlled situations through confidence, wit, and social power, but she now understood that there were other ways to earn respect. Sharing a talent, being vulnerable, and facing an unknown situation with courage could create admiration and connection in ways she had never imagined. The applause and astonishment of the audience were not just external validation. They were evidence that embracing vulnerability could lead to powerful, meaningful experiences. In the days that followed, her social interactions began to change. Students approached her more openly, conversations felt lighter, and there was a noticeable shift in how people responded to her presence. She no longer relied solely on intimidation or cleverness to command attention. Instead, she discovered that authenticity, courage, and openness could inspire respect and admiration. This realization allowed her to engage with others in more meaningful ways, strengthening friendships and creating a positive influence in the school environment. Her friends observed these changes and supported her growth. They encouraged her to continue exploring her talents, applauded her courage, and celebrated the new confidence she displayed. They noticed that she had become more empathetic, more aware of how her actions affected others, and more willing to connect without relying on dominance. The transformation was subtle but significant, altering the dynamics within their group and in the broader school community. Even students who had been wary of her influence now approached her with curiosity and respect. They asked questions, shared ideas, and expressed genuine admiration. The fear that had once defined her relationships with peers began to fade, replaced by connections built on talent, courage, and authenticity. This shift created a ripple effect, influencing how students interacted with one another and fostering a more positive and inclusive atmosphere. As she navigated the days following the showcase, she found herself reflecting on the lessons learned. The experience had not only revealed her hidden talent, but had also provided insight into the value of courage, vulnerability, and authenticity. She recognized that true respect was earned through effort, skill, and openness, rather than through control, intimidation, or social dominance. This understanding reshaped her approach to relationships, communication, and personal growth, allowing her to engage with others in more meaningful and constructive ways. Her journey also inspired others. Students who had witnessed her performance began to consider their own talents, vulnerabilities, and possibilities. They realized that stepping out of comfort zones, facing challenges, and sharing authentic parts of themselves could lead to admiration, connection, and personal growth. The impact of her performance extended beyond her own experience, influencing the school community and encouraging others to explore their potential. Through reflection and observation, she discovered a sense of fulfillment that had previously been missing. The admiration and respect she received were no longer tied to fear or dominance, but to the courage she had displayed and the talent she had shared. This realization brought a sense of peace, self-awareness, and empowerment. She understood that true confidence came from embracing one's abilities, taking risks, and connecting authentically with others. By the end of the week, the school atmosphere had subtly shifted. Conversations, interactions, and social dynamics reflected a new understanding of talent, courage, and respect. She had become a symbol of transformation, showing that even someone with a history of dominance and control could evolve, reveal hidden depths, and inspire others. The impact of her performance continued to resonate, creating lasting changes in perception, relationships, and the overall environment. As she walked through the halls, she noticed the small gestures of acknowledgement and admiration from her peers. Smiles, nods, and casual compliments replaced the wary glances and whispers of the past. She felt a sense of connection and belonging that had been absent before, a recognition of her abilities, character, and growth. The experience had taught her the value of authenticity, the power of vulnerability, and the importance of courage. It had reshaped her relationships, her perception of herself, and her approach to the world around her. In these moments, she realized that the talent showcase had been more than a performance. It had been a turning point, a lesson, and an opportunity to redefine herself. The applause and astonishment of the audience had revealed a new layer of her identity, one that was strong, talented, authentic, and human. The reactions of her peers reflected a shift in perception, the creation of admiration through genuine skill, and the emergence of connections built on respect and openness. Her reflections and experiences in the days following the showcase solidified her understanding that true strength came from within. It was not about intimidation, social dominance, or fear. It was about courage, talent, authenticity, and the willingness to reveal oneself despite uncertainty. She had stepped into a situation that could have been intimidating or humiliating, and instead, she had found empowerment, admiration, and self-discovery. The lessons learned and the changes experienced marked a significant chapter in her life, shaping her character, relationships, and future interactions in profound ways. Weeks passed since the talent showcase, and the school had not forgotten her performance. Every hallway echoed with stories of that unforgettable moment. People still talked about the girl who had once been known as the bully, the girl who had controlled classrooms and social circles with her sharp wit, and now had stunned everyone with her singing. Her reputation had shifted subtly but profoundly. No longer was she feared purely for her dominance. She was admired for her courage, her talent, and the way she had revealed a hidden part of herself. She walked through the hallways with a quiet confidence that was different from before. It wasn't the loud, attention-demanding confidence she had once relied on. Instead, it was grounded in authenticity. She had discovered a part of herself that she had never known could command respect in a new way. Her peers noticed it immediately. Students who had once avoided her or felt intimidated now approached her with genuine curiosity, asking about her singing, complimenting her courage, or even sharing their own hidden talents. The walls of fear that had once defined her relationships were slowly replaced with connections built on mutual respect and admiration. Her friends, who had been alongside her through everything, noticed the transformation as well. They had always admired her charm and quick thinking, but now they saw something deeper. She was more attentive to others, more patient, and more willing to celebrate the successes of those around her. The playful teasing that had once defined much of their interactions had softened, replaced by a supportive and encouraging energy. They realized that her growth was not only inspiring but also contagious, influencing the group and the wider school community. Even students who had previously been wary of her influence began to see her differently. They approached her without fear, sharing ideas, collaborating on projects, or simply engaging in conversation without the weight of past apprehensions. She found herself listening more, appreciating their perspectives, and offering genuine encouragement. This shift in behavior was not forced. It was natural, born from the lessons she had learned about vulnerability, courage, and authenticity. Her transformation became an example for others, a reminder that people could change and reveal new dimensions of themselves when given the right opportunity. The school community also responded positively. Teachers who had previously admired her intelligence now recognized her courage and emotional strength. They encouraged her to continue exploring her talents and to participate in other activities that allowed her to shine in ways beyond academics. The administration began to see her as a role model for personal growth, someone who had used a challenging situation to discover and demonstrate her abilities. Her story became a subtle inspiration for other students who had hidden talents or had felt limited by fear or uncertainty. She herself reflected on the journey she had taken. The nervousness she had felt before stepping on stage, the uncertainty, and the pressure had all been powerful catalysts for growth. She realized that stepping into the unknown, facing potential embarrassment, and daring to be vulnerable had opened doors to a new understanding of herself. She had learned that true strength did not only come from control or dominance but from embracing challenges, sharing one's abilities, and connecting authentically with others. The lessons she had learned in that moment of performance became guiding principles in her daily life. Over time, she found herself exploring other interests and talents she had previously kept private. Music, writing, and creative expression became outlets for her to connect with others and to continue building confidence in new ways. She joined school clubs, participated in group activities, and even helped mentor younger students who had hidden talents but lacked confidence. The transformation was ongoing, a process of continual discovery and growth. Her journey demonstrated that change was not instantaneous but developed through courage, reflection, and the willingness to embrace vulnerability. Her relationships with her peers deepened in meaningful ways. Former classmates who had been targets of her teasing now spoke with warmth and appreciation. Friendships that had been superficial or competitive evolved into genuine connections based on shared interests, mutual respect, and empathy. She learned to balance confidence with humility, understanding that true admiration came from authenticity rather than fear. Her interactions became richer, more rewarding, and more human-centric, reflecting the lessons she had internalized from her performance. Her influence on the school culture became noticeable. Students began taking more risks in showcasing their talents, sharing their ideas, and expressing themselves without fear of judgment. The environment shifted from one of competition and status to one of encouragement and discovery. Her story and performance had become a subtle catalyst for positive change, inspiring others to embrace opportunities, challenge themselves, and explore hidden potential. The ripple effect of her actions demonstrated the power of courage and authenticity in creating meaningful social change. Throughout this transformation, she continued to grow personally. She became more self-aware, recognizing the impact of her actions on others and making conscious choices to foster positive interactions. She learned to celebrate the successes of others while maintaining her own confidence. The balance between self-assurance and empathy allowed her to navigate social dynamics with grace, respect, and authenticity. Her journey highlighted the importance of inner strength, self-discovery, and the courage to step beyond comfort zones. The lasting impression of her talent and courage was evident in the way people spoke about her. Students and teachers alike shared stories of the performance, reflecting on the moment when the confident girl, once feared for her dominance, had stunned everyone with her voice and presence. The admiration she received was rooted not in fear, but in genuine appreciation for her abilities, her bravery, and the authenticity she displayed. Her story became a reminder that people were capable of growth, surprise, and transformation, no matter their past behavior or reputation. As months passed, she embraced new opportunities with enthusiasm and courage. She performed again, participated in creative projects, and engaged with her peers in ways that reflected her growth. The lessons from that initial performance continued to guide her decisions, interactions, and personal development. She understood that true confidence was multifaceted, built not only on skill and intelligence but also on courage, authenticity, and the willingness to embrace vulnerability. Her journey also taught her the importance of inspiring others. She began to mentor students who felt shy, insecure, or unsure of their abilities. She shared her experiences, encouraging them to step into new challenges and discover their own hidden talents. By doing so, she created a supportive environment where others could grow, learn, and gain confidence. Her transformation had a lasting impact, extending beyond herself to positively influence the broader school community. Through reflection, performance, and genuine connection, she had evolved from a girl known for dominance and teasing into someone admired for courage, talent, and authenticity. The experience reshaped her self-perception, her relationships, and her influence on the school community. It demonstrated that people could change, reveal hidden dimensions of themselves, and inspire others through courage and authenticity. In the end, she understood that the talent showcase had been more than a challenge. It had been a turning point. It had allowed her to step out of her comfort zone, reveal a hidden talent, and experience admiration that was earned through skill and authenticity rather than fear. The lessons learned, the respect gained, and the personal growth achieved became a foundation for her future. She carried these lessons forward, embracing new challenges, fostering meaningful connections, and inspiring others to explore their potential. Her story, once defined by intimidation and social dominance, was now a story of courage, talent, and transformation. She had discovered the power of vulnerability, the value of authenticity, and the impact of stepping into the unknown. The applause, admiration, and astonishment she had received were not merely external validation. They were evidence of her growth and the positive influence she could have on the world around her. And as she continued her journey, she did so with a quiet confidence, a deep sense of self-awareness, and the understanding that true strength comes from embracing who you are and daring to reveal it to others.